Good morning, everyone. Our presenter today is none other than JuliAna Brammer of the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, University of Maryland Baltimore School of Pharmacy. As the director of PharmD admissions at the fourth oldest school of pharmacy and one of the top schools of pharmacy in the nation, few others could speak to our topic today with such expertise. We are honored to have her with us today. Feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much, Camille, for that introduction, and welcome everybody. I apologize for being a little bit late today, but I'm glad you guys are here, and I hope to give you some good information about applying to pharmacy school and kind of like applying to, graduate school generally. You can definitely apply this in different ways. So thank you. So just a little bit about, pharmacy as you're debating, if you want to do pharmacy, if you're looking into pharmacy, maybe among other things, basically, like how does a pharmacist differ from, other health professionals? And basically the pharmacist is the drug expert, the medication expert. So they know, how the drugs work in the body, how it works with different patients, how it interacts with each other, and they educate patients. They counsel patients about optimal therapy options, as well as physicians as they work on the healthcare team in the hospital, for example. And, doing this to ensure best patient outcomes. Again, educating patients goes hand in hand with patient adherence. So that's our goal, is to, enhance the best patient outcomes, and they're trusted and highly accessible. So if you think about it, most people are within 5 or 10 miles of a pharmacy. You don't need a copay to talk to a pharmacist. You don't need an appointment. You can just walk in and potentially get an immunization. For example, in Maryland, we're licensed to immunize, and certainly we're on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as, our normal kind of immunizations on an annual basis, or like flu shots, for example. So that's kind of the expertise of a pharmacist. Let's see, hopefully this works here. I'm gonna pass by because I feel like it's having some issues right now. I'm not sure why it's showing that. But think about, why a career in pharmacy might interest you. Let's see here. I can't. Maybe there's a lot of things you can do. So there's a lot of flexibility, learning about medicine and how it works in the body, working with patients, and improving public health. So those are just some, reasons why people might be interested in pharmacy. And kind of along those lines, there are so many different career paths. This is a shot right here, actually, of our first year students at the white coat ceremony. And so, throughout their education here and opportunities, you have the opportunity to kind of explore these different areas of pharmacy, such as community hospital, hospice, oncology, pediatric. Many of these are clinical, industry, regulatory science, if you're interested in that, FDA, poison control. We have the Poison Center on our campus, and so they field, thousands of calls a year, tens of thousands of calls a year about, if a child maybe, took a medication or even PET, how to handle that. So these are just, like I said, a handful. And actually, I'm going to forward the slides, and there's a document that has over 100 career options in pharmacy. So, and this is it. So, obviously I won't read all of these to you, but it's just kind of a visual of like, this is just some of the things you could do. So pharmacy practice, the clinical pharmacist, critical care, emergency care. I know one of our ambulatory care, that the ambulatory care, if you guys don't know what that is, if you know anybody, it's basically chronic disease management. So I know we all probably know somebody with diabetes, or even renal failure, those kinds of things where it's a chronic condition. Pharmacists will review patient charts and care for those patients, making sure they're getting the right medication. So again, these are clinical and kind of practice roles. This one here is pharmaceutical industry roles. So as I mentioned, industry is another big interest of our graduates, particularly because we're here in Maryland. And so this is our class of 2022 post-graduation plans. You can see it's about 30% community, 36% residency, 12% fellowships, and 20 other. Academic pharmacy roles, technology and health informatics roles. So here's just virtual clinical pharmacist, telehealth, pharmaceutics professor. Of course, there's academics, roles as well. So, and here's some more as well. So I'll post a link to this at the end. This particular document that's on a really great website, Pharmacy is Right for Me. So if it does a lot of cute quizzes and gives you examples of these roles that I'm talking about, and kind of what a day in the life of these different types of roles as a pharmacist do. So as you guys are, in Prince George's Community College, you're probably getting some undergraduate credits. And so as far as a path to Doctor of Pharmacy, and like I said, sometimes these things can translate to other health professions as well. But for us particularly, high school, we take AP credits. If you can get shadowing experience or service experience, that's kind of good experience to start exploring, and certainly can do that in undergraduate as well. For our program, we require 65 credits, which takes about 2 years. We do not require a bachelor's degree for our Doctor of Pharmacy program. So, and then our program is 4-year full-time program. So the 2 years of undergraduate and then 4 years of pharmacy school, it can take as little as 6 years to get your doctorate from, undergraduate. So that's kind of appealing to some students who kind of want to save time and money and not necessarily, apply after the undergraduate, but you certainly, you have any option that is best for you. Leadership and work experience. I mean, both of those things, if you can be involved on campus, certainly attending things like this, as well as, being a member of a club on campus, maybe holding a leadership role. And work experience. We do not require work experience, but any kind of work experience, I think you can get transferable skills from. So for example, if you can get pharmacy tech experience, certainly some of those skills will be like identifying medication and working with patients and just kind of knowing what the community pharmacy atmosphere is like, or hospitals. Sometimes you can do a pharmacy tech job there too. But even let's say if you have food service or retail, that's working with the public and multitasking and being on your feet. So certainly think about how the experiences you've had can contribute to the skills you need as a pharmacist. So again, pharmacy school is 4 years full-time. Customize your degree. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Generally, the first 2 years are the cohort years. Your third year is your elective year where you can do dual degrees, pathways, or rotation. You do have to pass licensure, NAPLEX and MPJE, and then go into community independent practice, or if you're interested in some of those clinical fields, residency and fellowships or specialized training, that could be a year or 2 years. So as far as applying to pharmacy school, again, as I mentioned, we do require 65 prerequisite credits. They are similar across health professions entry requirements. So, that's why I say, as you're going through these prerequisite credits, kind of general chemistry, biology, A&P, kind of do some career and self-exploration. And maybe I think for us in our school, a big part of how our students do that is student organization. So potentially if there's a health student organization on campus, start to kind of get to know those and see if there's some activities you can participate in. Plan out your coursework with an advisor. So our prerequisites are pretty generic, and I'm going to pull them up in a second. But you can certainly talk to an advisor at PGCC and say, am I on the right track to get this done, to apply in the fall? So we have fall application only. But you don't have to have all of your prereqs in by the fall. By the time you apply. You do have to have them in by the fall, but you don't have to have them in by the time you apply, which is April. So, you don't have to get them in by the April deadline. You have to get them in by August. So anyway, as you're working through those, You can plan those out with your advisor, see what prereqs you may need from the school. The sciences should be within 5 years. We also accept international credits, AP credits. We can do an evaluation for you at some point where you want to, if you may want to know, like, would this credit count? We're always available for appointments, myself and Ms. Patrice Sharp, who works in our admissions office too. So talk to family and friends. I mentioned this website here, Pharmacy for Me. So I'll put that in the chat in a bit. And we actually, on our website, which I can put that in the chat too, have an introduction to pharmacy series. So we did this over the summertime, and it's a 2-part series, and we highlight different alumni. And I think it's really educational, because that you can kind of see that, what they did and what they're doing now and how they got there, what they like about it, kind of a typical day in the life. And something for sure that I got of all those is that it's a very broad degree, and also there's many different things you can do even within what you're doing. So work as a pharmacy tech or shadow, and I mentioned that as well. Self-exploration, so I mentioned that as well. Make connections with advisors, faculty, employers for your letters of recommendation. So kind of start to do that as you're getting maybe even a year out from applying. Start to kind of lay that groundwork and talk to people about that. So this is a sample course layout. That's something that you could potentially do, within 2 years. And as I mentioned, if you took those AP credits, you can just scratch them right off a year. But it's, Gen Chem 1 and 2, Organic Chem 1 and 2, A&P. We do require 2 biology courses, 1 physics course, and some humanities. And you can kind of see in your year 1 spring is where, if you wanted to start your PharmCAS application, it opens up. And we have open houses, both in person and online. So certainly that's something to do as you're getting closer to applying. Your year 2 is your application year. So the fall, we have a priority deadline of November. So you could, potentially submit it as early as that. And you can see in that fall semester here, you're still taking these courses, and you could potentially, submit your application April 1st, continue to take these courses in the fall and spring. And of course, this is just an example. So you can take it in the winter and the summer as well, as long as, once again, you have it complete by August. We no longer require the PCAT. So, that's more like if you have a little bit of a academic record that might have some difficulty to it. It might have if you're below a 2.75 science GPA, we may recommend that you take a PCAT, but honestly, even this year, I'm not sure if we'll continue to even recommend it. So that may not even be, something to think about. As far as our deadlines and applying, I mean, for any pharmacy school course, you want to kind of look at what you're interested in. Just like everything, pharmacy schools, healthcare professions have pros and cons. And it's really something, you have to research and see what's best for you. But for our application, it's April 3rd. As I mentioned, we do have a priority deadline on November 1st. And as I mentioned, the prerequisites can be in progress. Once you submit your application, you can upload new information into PharmCAS. So you can, send a letter, a PCAT, or your fall or spring transcripts as you go. And then supplemental materials, resume, supplemental applications. So we do, recommend that you submit those supplemental materials too. FAFSA, it is a full-time program, so our students do get a combination of usually scholarships, loans, and grants to, make up their financial package and their cost of attendance here at school pharmacy. And we have rolling interviews October through May, and they're virtual, continue to be virtual. So actually, we'll talk a little bit about virtual interviews as well. So I'm going to go into detail a little bit about the application components, and then I'll talk about the personal statement, kind of tips about a personal statement, and also tips about interviewing. So those are the topics I hope to cover today. So as far as, again, PharmCAS application components, we do look at applications holistically, our candidates holistically. As far as we look at the academic history, it is important to do well in the sciences, but at the same time, it is also normal for people to have gone through maybe semesters that weren't as strong, or had poor grade here or there. It's not anything to stress too much about. Like I said, generally it needs to be a 2.75 or above to be a competitive application, but like trends upwards, things like that are things that we look for. As you're applying, you can put your official or unofficial PCAT in there. Your coursework, you have to enter it all in. So I know that's like kind of the most time-consuming part of the PharmCAS application. We ask you to include the planned, so that we know, what you have planned, and making sure that you have planned to complete all the prerequisites by the time you enter into school. You also want to add in your supporting information, such as experience, extracurricular activities, all the stuff I kind of just talked about. So like all that stuff, make sure you put it in the application, as well as, if you attach a resume, so you kind of, but the application is where we kind of look first. Sometimes I'll see it in the personal statement. I'll be like, oh, they didn't mention that they were the Pharm president, so if we catch it, we will, but it's important to, put it in the application itself. Any achievements. There are some, questions there, special life circumstances or COVID-19 impacts. I mean, obviously we know, things happen, and COVID-19 was a very, difficult time. So, if you feel like your academics have been impacted, because of, different things, you can put that in your application there. So you can put it in your personal statement if you like, or you can put it in the special life circumstances if you feel like it's something you want to explain to the committee. But don't feel like you need to, but if you want to, those are kind of other places you can put it, for us to review. Letters of recommendation, we like a work supervisor, faculty, or colleague. Typically it's a mix of those. If you do have work experience, usually the committee likes to see a letter from a supervisor, but like I said, it's not really required for any particular, recommenders. Am I doing, Camille, so far so good? Okay, thank you. Oh, you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
Sorry, just a heads up, in about 10 or so minutes, I'm going to publish a survey link so students can take a survey on how they found this presentation, and if they want to receive credit for any teacher that's made this an option.
Thank you. So considerations, recommendations as you're, applying. Should I take the PCAT? I kind of mentioned some of this stuff. So, what does my academic history look like? Is there anything that's not as strong that you might feel like could be strengthened by taking a PCAT? Kind of how many courses have I taken? So sometimes we do like to see that, maybe you've taken at least one full time, which is 12 credits course load, just because when you come into our program, it is very heavy course load. So it's nice to have that academic experience. But once again, we do look, because sometimes, you have to work and, or you may have caretaker responsibilities. So it may not always be possible to carry a full course load, but that experience can be helpful, as you're transitioning to graduate school. And additional things to kind of help you prepare, biochem, upper level biology, genetics. And like I said, if you can carry a good course load, that'll help you prepare as well. And then include your resume, do what you can to expose yourself to different careers, including pharmacy. Obviously it's something you want to think about before applying, is why you're applying to the school that you are and the profession that you are and the things that you hope to gain from that. And apply early. I mean, that's probably, again, across the board that like graduate schools like that, because it gives us an opportunity to review. In our case, we do incentivize it with additional scholarship funds if you're able to apply before November 1st. So electives and rotations for our program, again, it's a 4-year full-time program. The first 2 years are required courses, and those are kind of a mix of basic sciences as well as abilities lab, which we have a community lab, a hospital lab, and an OSCE suite, which is like a patient interaction kind of lab. Those are all through the first 3 years. And as I mentioned, the first 2 years are like kind of a review, but we also do some therapeutics. So we start our applied science therapeutics series, where we go through different disease states and talk through, you know, the medication therapeutics for those. And then your 3rd year is your elective year. So as I mentioned, you have your labs, but you also have your electives. So these are just a handful of some of the electives that are available to you, just to give you, again, kind of that example of the variety of things that you can do, such as, you know, mental health, cardiology, advocacy. We just had our legislative day going to Annapolis and advocating for different bills that, you know, we believe will benefit the field of pharmacy. IPE, that's interprofessional education. So here at University of Maryland, we are on campus with other graduate schools, or primarily graduate campus. So you do have some opportunity to work with schools of medicine, nursing, social work, law, and dentistry. So those are the other schools on our campus. So, you know, there are some interprofessional opportunities for you to be able to interact with them as well. And then rotations, your 4th year is entirely rotations. You do have rotations prior to your 4th year, but in your 4th year is where you have 7 5-week rotations. So for example, FDA is pretty popular among our students. Again, industry, because of where we are, tends to be pretty popular. And because of where we are, we have, you know, close relationships to, you know, FDA, Centers of Medicare, NIH, just because, again, you know, they're not far from us. So also, of course, there's community retail and independent pharmacy rotation opportunities. We have the University of Maryland medical system, you know, a block up from our school. So a lot of our faculty practice there, and our students do rotations there. Also, the Baltimore VA hospital is, again, a block the other way. So again, everything is so, you know, close here on campus. And that's another place that students can do rotations. Johns Hopkins is about 3 miles up the road. And again, they have a clinical track with us, as well as rotation opportunities. Public Health Service, Indian Health Services, and international experiences are some other rotation opportunities for our students. And just kind of like, again, you know, knowing the different, you don't have to, I mean, that's when you come into pharmacy school, you can definitely, some people know what they want to do, some people don't, some people know and then change their mind a lot, and that's okay. You know, like you have like a couple years to kind of like explore, you know, take advantage of student org activities, take advantage of, you know, opportunities on campus to kind of think about what it is. And we do have some dual degrees, you know, down the line, if you feel like, you know, you want to do PharmD MBA, so you could shave some time off of doing the MBA by doing those required courses of the dual degree in your 3rd year. So that's how those work. The MS degrees, PharmD MS ones on the bottom, may only take, you can maybe do that within the time frame, or may only take an additional 6 months. The rest of these are usually at least 6 months to a year. PharmD JD is 2 years. So, you know, they may add some additional time. And I mentioned the student organization. So this is just the student organizations we have here in the pharmacy school. So again, you know, if you think you might be interested in working with kids, you might want to, you know, step into pediatric pharmacy advocacy groups, you know, general board meeting. They're definitely going to be recruiting you. They definitely recruit our incoming students to be a part of their student organization. So, you know, a lot of times they offer, you know, food and like kind of social activities as well. Industry pharmacy organization, if you're interested in that, or psychiatric. So you can see there's the different clinical kind of specialties that reflect student organizations. There's also community service, like a bridge to academic excellence, students promoting awareness. So most of the student organizations have some element of community service, or definitely encourage that here at UMB particularly. And so, and like I said, some of the organizations are, you know, primarily community service. APHA is one that most of our students are in. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities to get involved and to find something that, you know, really speaks to you. Okay, so moving on to personal statement. So just kind of backing up and as you're like thinking about your application and generally, what is the purpose of a personal statement? I mean, we want to know why you're interested in pharmacy, right? Or whatever you're applying to, what makes you interested in that particularly? Maybe it's an experience that you had, maybe it's a background, maybe and as it mentions here, it's how it can't be found in the rest of your application, such as your motivation, your goals, your reasons for pursuing the career. Remember, you are more than your resume, transcript, and test scores. And that's true. So we look through that and, kind of try to glean, what it is that a student wants to do while they're here. So what needs to be addressed? Why are you pursuing a career in pharmacy, and maybe how it's still related to your long-term goals, and how this education will help you achieve your goals. Spend some time brainstorming, jotting down some ideas. And these are some good, kind of starters. What is special about you or your life story? What would help us better understand you? When did you become first interested? And what experiences reinforce that? What are goals that you have? Any leadership or work experience, and maybe how that's contributed to your growth. If you've had to overcome any hardships, again, that's kind of up to you what you want to disclose, but certainly you can if you feel like you want to, and what characteristics and skills that you possess that will improve your success as a future pharmacist. And then this goes through just a general outline. And this is a good disclaimer, there's no specific or correct formula, but generally you might want to start with an introduction, background, context, then your supporting paragraphs, and then your conclusion and how that will make you a good candidate for the PharmD program. So these are some other tips. Don't be too broad. You want to narrow it, be unique. I'll say be careful with that. You don't want to kind of go, you don't have to make a creative writing per se, but you just want to make sure it's well written, and that it flows well, it reads well. Certainly you can have somebody, look it over and give you some feedback on it. Don't procrastinate. Avoid repeating information that's found elsewhere. Of course, there's plagiarize. If you cite anything, make sure if you, quote anybody, make sure you cite it. And here's some other pointers here, like immature, be professional, highlight what makes you unique, and then potentially ask for feedback. So ask somebody maybe to look it over, see if it flows well. So those are some tips about personal statement. And next I will talk about interview tips. So again, for here, for University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, we do virtual interviews still. We find that it's easier and it's kind of like obviously less expensive for candidates to interview over Zoom, and then we do provide opportunities to come and visit the school. So if you happen to be in town, you can certainly drop by, and then we have a number of events. So we try to make sure that students still have an opportunity to see the school, but our interviews, we have one virtual interview with faculty and another interview with a PharmD student. So 2 separate Zoom interviews. And then we also have a calculations assessment. So that for us is 10 question, kind of like algebra type and calculation statistics type questions. And it's not anything to stress too much about, it's not weighted super high, but we do require that people, do that prior to an admissions decision. So that's our interview process. So in general, of course, you do want to research the school's websites so that the program requirements. If you have any questions, their strengths and weaknesses. Practice answering mock interview questions in front of friends, family, or the mirror, and maybe schedule a mock interview session with the school's career center, That's a great idea. And get hybrid interview ready, such as checking your camera speakers. So, I mean, it's good to practice, but you don't want to be overly rehearsed, so it's that balance of, knowing, feeling confident in what you know and practicing that. So this here details the STAR technique, as far as, interviews techniques. So maybe detail the background of, the question, provide context, describe the challenge and expectations, what needs to be done, action, maybe elaborate the specific action, and results, if you explain accomplishments, recognition, and quantify. So those are some of the tips about what to prepare, how to prepare for an interview. So these are some sample questions. Why did you choose a career in pharmacy? Tell me about a time you had a challenging experience and what have you learned? How has work experience or extracurricular activities developed your transferable skills important to success in graduate school? How would you handle a situation in which your classmate was doing poorly and asks for help? So those are some potential questions. I mean, the other thing I will say about, just generally preparing for graduate school and maybe some other questions that may be asked is how you will plan to transition to graduate school. So for example, for us, like you may be moving to a new city, if you have caretaking roles or not, how you're going to plan for those, or kind of communicate with your family, like, hey, I'm pursuing a doctorate program and I need your support, and kind of have those family and friends, understand what that can mean for you. So think about that transition, because it's, it is a transition for students to come from undergraduate to graduate, and then also, like I said, potentially move cities, be on a graduate campus. So, like I said, you want to plan for it, embrace it, and, just think about how you can set yourself up for success. So that's all I have for you today. These are the resources I was talking about, this pharmacyforme.org, and my UMSOP story. So that's kind of another example of like our website featuring our alumni and little videos about what they're doing now. So they kind of follow, I think, 3 or 4 different either students, PharmD students, or alumni, and kind of a day in the life. What are they doing now? And so those are kind of good, once again, to explore what you can do. And then our inquiry form, that's our QR code if you're interested in getting any like notifications about our online or on campus open houses. So that's all I have for you guys today. I don't know if you have any questions. I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brammer, for this fantastic informative session to our students. And thank you for giving us your time. And I wanted